Google Developer Student Clubs train hundreds of thousands of university student developers globally while having fun getting to know other students at their school. Google selects students with strong leadership skills from across the globe once a year to start a club on their campus. These leads believe knowledge is power and that technology can do extraordinary things for the world. They take on the responsibility to help students learn and empower each other to solve real problems around them. Students can participate in the annual Solution Challenge by Google developers to solve for one of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Join us in building a global community for students in technology.
Hi everyone, and welcome to our session 2 for our Android Study Jams. My name is Ashley Moore, and I'm the GDSC lead for Benedict College. And we're so excited for you all to be here and to partake in our session, which is to create your first app. So for today's schedule, what we'll be doing as a run through, we will first go through. So we're first going to remind you all to check in for a chance to win a prize. We'll be running the raffle during our break. Also, attend our 4 sessions, and you can make an app to get Google Merch vouchers, and you can also use a Google Merch site for those vouchers. So for the first song, you're going to do the pre-session, and then we're going to go through an overview for today. Then you're going to go creating your first Android app. Then we're going to break, and that's the time we're going to go ahead and run the raffle. You'll be running your app on an emulator. You'll also be running your app on an Android device. Then we go to unit test, and then we'll jump over to Q&A. So let's go ahead and introduce our speaker, which is Sierra O'Brien, which is an Android Google developer expert, and she's here to you guys to partake in our session. So let's give her a big round of applause.
Hey, thank you so much for having me back again. I saw some names in the chat that I recognized from last time, so welcome back. And for anyone joining for the first time, welcome. I'm super excited. I love running these sessions, and I am an Android expert, so really excited to build our first Android application together. I am joining today from Cincinnati, Ohio. I saw someone in the chat saying that they're joining from Dayton, so we're actually very close in proximity. So welcome to my other Ohio people. And then welcome to everyone joining from Chicago and Florida, Seattle, all across the United States, and some folks from Canada. A little bit about me for those who did not meet me last time. I am an Android engineer at a consulting firm in Cincinnati, Ohio, where I get to work on lots of different apps across lots of different industries. And I've been doing Android development for about 7 years and became an Android developer expert just earlier this year. Some things that I really like talking about with Android is accessibility and Jetpack Compose, and helping developers like yourselves get over that hump and get started building Android apps. So really excited for entry-level topics. And so with that, let's go ahead and jump in. Today, we're going to be building your first Android app. So like they just mentioned, some of the things that we're going to be doing is create your first Android project in Android Studio. Also, emulate an Android device on your computer, and then run your app on an emulator. And this is going to be pathway 2 of our session. So let's go ahead and jump in and get started. So we're going to go to the same location that we went last time, which is going to be g.co/android/basics. And so we can just go ahead and do that. g.co/android/basics. And you can tell I've been here a lot recently to practice and get ready for this. And once we're there, we're going to go into Unit 1. And so we'll just hit Explore. And then we'll see that we're going to jump back into Pathway 1, which is an introduction to Kotlin. And we can go ahead and do Explore again. Oh, actually, did I click the wrong one? Ooh. I did click the wrong one. Sorry. Let me go back. We're going to Pathway 2, like I just said. Sorry about that. Creating our first app. So just like last time, there's some optional steps that we're going to go ahead and skip over this time. And so the first one is going to be an introduction to Android Studio. We're going to do this a little bit live, but if you ever need to go back and check it out, Google has excellent videos to kind of get you started with these sorts of things. And it's only about 1.5 minutes, so something to reflect on after this session. We're also assuming that you already downloaded and installed Android Studio before this session. If you haven't, that's okay. You can follow along and watch us work through these code labs and then go back and try it yourself on your own time. And there's also the step 2, which is going to be walking you through how to download and install Android Studio if you have any trouble with that. And we'll have some tips for which platform you're working on as well. So with that, just want to call out, if you have any questions, just ask them in the chat. We have some folks moderating the chat throughout the entire time. And so they'll shout those questions to me so that we can get those answered in real time as we work through the code labs. And I think the next slide is going to be break. Yes. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into these code labs and go from there. A quick so I'm actually going to pull this across my screen so you can't see it anymore. And so now you're left with that. Just something to call out. It might be kind of difficult to manage your windows throughout this. I am going to try to give you as much context as possible so that you don't actually need to be watching me. And so I suggest putting your screen side by side suggest opening Android Studio and just working along, and I'll try to call out where the buttons are on your screen so that you don't have to be watching what I'm doing. And then you can jump back into the actual video presentation if you get stuck or need to make sure you're doing the right thing. But I'm going to try to give you as much direction as possible so that the only thing that you have to look at is your Android Studio. So the first of the 3 code labs that we're going to work through tonight is going to be creating and running your first Android application. And so in this code lab, you're going to create your first Android app. Happy birthday. All of these code labs are very happy birthday themed, which will be starting from a template for a basic app, which is going to be provided by Android Studio. You'll also explore what an Android project looks like and to learn how to use different windows in Android Studio. So some prerequisites for this particular code lab are going to be familiarity with setting up, configuring, and using applications such as a word processor or spreadsheet. What you'll learn is you're going to create an Android Studio project for an Android app using a template, and what you'll build is a basic Android app from a template, and what you'll need is a computer with Android Studio installed. So hopefully all those things are already set up, and we can go ahead and jump in. Let me get my windows set up as well. Okay, so with that was our introduction for this first code lab, and we're going to go ahead and jump straight into section 2, which is going to be creating our first app. So what we'll need to do here is we're going to open up Android Studio and get started from there. You should see a window that's, if you've never used Android Studio before, it's going to be mostly an empty screen that says projects, customized plugins along one side. And at the top, you'll see some buttons like new project and open, or get from VCS, which is going to be your version control system, which is something like Git. In Android Studio, a project template is an Android app that has all the necessary parts, but isn't going to do very much for you. And the purpose is to help you get started faster and save you some work. We'll look at some template examples as we get started with a new project, but there are some examples like a map or an app with multiple screens. This is going to be really helpful if you're actually starting to build an app, because there's actually a lot of code that you need just to open an Android Studio project. There's going to be a lot of boilerplate, and it's going to be really tedious and hard to set up. If I were truly starting an Android project from scratch with nothing else on my screen, it would be really challenging for me because I rely so much on these project templates. Even in real life. So again, we're opening Android Studio, and once we're on this screen that says Welcome to Android Studio, we're going to start a new project, which should be a button at the upper right side of your screen. So we can go ahead and open that. Mine is loading. Okay. Oops. Last time it froze on me with this button, and so I'm hoping it doesn't do that tonight. So give it a second to load. And so what you're going to see when that happens is you're going to see on the left-hand side of your screen, I'm very bad at left and right, so I apologize in advance as I try to tell you what you should expect, is you're going to see your different template types. So you see phone and tablet. So these are going to be templates for apps that you might run on a phone or a tablet. But you can also find other kinds of templates as well. So if you want to build a app for your watch, they also have watchOS templates. If you want to build an app for a TV, they have Android TV templates, and you can also do things for your car and using the automotive templates. So we're going to stay on the phone and tablet, and even within this particular section, you're going to see that there's a lot of different choices. And so each one of these are going to be different kinds of things to just get you started in the right direction. So we have a basic activity, and you see this one might have that bottom floating action button and also a little top menu bar if you want that. Bottom navigation is a super common pattern that you see in a lot of applications. So if you wanted to build something like a Facebook replica or an Instagram replica in your future work, then you might want to choose this bottom navigation activity, and it'll automatically set up that bottom nav bar for you. And we see things like the map activity, a Google Play activity, and then we mentioned very quickly last time about Jetpack Compose. And so there's also now in the newer versions of Android Studio, a compose activity so that you can get started with Jetpack Compose. So we're going to choose today an empty activity. So it should be kind of on the middle of your screen if you haven't moved around too much. And you can just go ahead and click next on that. And so now you're going to land on this next page of our new project wizard. And so there are different things that we can update and change. So if you're looking at yours, the first thing that we're going to do is update the name of our project. By default, it'll be something like my application. And so we're going to change that to Happy Birthday. And so while you're typing out that name, you should automatically see your package name updating. So my package name is Sierra O'Brien, that's me, .example.happy birthday. So what you should see, no matter what, is kind of that last dot, whatever, changing to happy birthday as you update this name. And that package name is always going to kind of reflect your application name. The package name is the name used by the Android system to uniquely identify your app. And again, the default is something like example, and sometimes an organization. For example, my name would be technically my organization name as well in that package. And so if you uploaded your app to the App Store, that package name becomes a lot more important than just doing it on your computer. And the next thing is that it's going to have a save location. So the way that I personally have Android Studio set up is that it's going to save to a special development folder where I can put all of my different development projects so I can easily find them. Again, by default, it's going to create an Android Studio projects for you to put there. And you can also open up that package and click on the little file folder at the end of that. So to the right side of that editable box and pick a new location to save it in. So these are all my development projects that I can open with Android Studio, but I could really put it anywhere on my computer that would be helpful for me to find later. I'm going to leave mine where it is, but something to think about. And the next thing is that we can actually put between Java and Kotlin. And so last time we talked a little bit about how Android used to be a Java first platform. And then in 2017, it added support for Kotlin. And then in 2019, we became a Kotlin first platform. So we learned about Kotlin this week. So we're going to leave our language Kotlin this time. And then the last thing that we get to choose here is also our minimum SDK. And the minimum SDK is the lowest level of Android that you're going to let your Android app work on. And this becomes more important as you pull in some dependencies and different things that you want to be able to use for backwards compatibility. So if you only use the newest, if we set this all the way up to 30 or 31, then we can use all the newest things and not have to worry about if it's going to work on older versions of Android. But that also means it's not going to run on very many devices. So Android 12 is only in the developer preview, and so it's going to run on less than 1% of devices, so probably not a great choice for our application. So we're going to go back to API 19 to follow this code lab, and so we see here that that's going to run on 99.4% of devices, And you can also click this Help Me Choose, which will be right below that. And you'll see a nice UI graphic version of the different versions and what percentage of cumulative percentage of devices that will run on. So by picking 4.4 KitKat 19, then it's going to run on 99.4%. In different applications, it might make sense, especially if you're just testing it out, to pull it up to some of those higher levels to be able to use some of the cool new technologies. So we're going to leave ours at API 19, and then we can go ahead and push finish, which is going to be in the lower right-hand corner of this wizard. And then we're going to wait for just a couple of minutes while it spins up. This is a great time if you have any questions to ask those in the chat now. I see Ian ask about naming the new Android versions, and Angela is correct. They do still name them. And I think Q was Quince Pie. That's when we stopped seeing them pop up in the public sphere. So we had Q at Quince Pie, R was Red Velvet, S was Snow Cone, and so we are currently on Tiramisu as well. And from what I was told, we're starting to see that Tiramisu sneak back into the public eye. So my project is loading, and I'm going to move it back over from my other screen. While it does that, I'm trying not to upset Android Studio too much while we do this. So you should see some things happening in the lower bar of your Android Studio to the right-hand side. It might say something like scanning files. And depending on how fast your computer is, and if you're sharing on a platform, it might say other things. API version, we are going to use a min SDK of 4.4 API 19 for our project, Gary. So again, I'm just going to let everything figure it out. So you probably see Gradle build in your corner. Yours are probably going to go faster than mine. My computer is a little slow when building Android projects and sharing on a video platform. So we are just going to hang out for a couple of minutes, hopefully less than a couple of minutes, while it syncs and builds. And then we'll go over the last section of creating your first app and look at the different pieces of Android Studio when the app pops up. Great question. Android Studio is notoriously slow and will make your system slow. And there's a couple different things that we're going to hit throughout this code lab that they're specifically going to call out that eats up a lot of your system. And so you want to be mindful of how much you install and if you really need those different pieces. By default, Android Studio is going to install the littlest amount of things that you need to run these kinds of projects. But it is notoriously slow. Renee has a number of saying it uses 1 to 3 gigabytes of RAM. There are a lot of running Android jokes about the only thing you need in the winter is your laptop running Android Studio, and it will warm your entire house because it always heats up your computer. If you follow Android devs on Twitter, you will almost definitely run into that joke at least once a year. So mine is still running, so you can see it going real slow on mine. I know I'm at Gradle configure projects. If you have any Android questions, we can answer those while we wait. Ooh, Gary's fans kicked on. Classic Android Studio. I always restart my computer before doing these presentations with the hopes of this time it will play nice with a live stream, and it forever lets me a little bit down. So the package name is generally something like com, and then there's an optional organization. So my organization on my personal computer is going to be Sierra O'Brien, so it's just my first and last name, and then .example your application name, and that application name is going to by default fill in that package name when you're updating it, although you can go back and change it if you want to. And that package name needs to be unique to this particular Android application. And so if you're doing it on your individual computer, not a big deal. But if you're doing it on if you're doing it to push it to the App Store, it actually has to be unique across that App Store as well. Is there an Android VM we can access? We are going to talk about emulators, which is going to be a software version of an Android phone, if that is what you're asking, that runs on your computer a little bit later. So actually, right after we finish letting this Gradle build this model and show, we will move on to running on an emulator. And so that, if that's the question you're asking, yes. There's a fake Android device that you can use. If there's something else you're asking about, feel free to add additional information there too. So what else we got? Oh, a VM where we can access the Android Studio. Not totally sure on that answer. I think I have only done it as an installed program on my computer. It's possible, especially with some of the recent updates with GitHub and doing GitHub remotes and these sorts of things where you can share code and contribute to code that way, that they might have support for it. But I don't know the answer. Which frame we selected as a new project? Yeah, so we use the empty activity. So it should be the second in the second row, so right in the middle of your screen if you're getting started with that setup wizard. So it should just be a blank white screen with a title bar at the top as well. Sure, we can talk a little bit about Gradle scripts now. Oh, it's almost there. Here we go. Okay, so we can talk about these now. So we'll talk about that as we kind of look through this project a little bit as well. Okay, so the last thing that we're going to do before we switch over to break is just kind of look at the different pieces of Android Studio when you start a new project. And so your project has probably already gotten there, and so you might have already peeked around and looked at these sorts of things. Okay, so if this is your first time opening Android Studio, you will have another tab that is open. So on the right side of your screen, you might have a What's New in Bumblebee. I have been using Bumblebee for a little while professionally, and so that tab is already closed for me, and because I have already seen all the new. But that's just going to pop up anytime there's a new version of Android Studio. To give you just an update of what they've changed, how your developer experience is going to improve, and different things that you can do with Android Studio. So I have the two other panes that are going to be open. And so if you're following along in the code lab, we have section 1, which is going to be the project window. And that's going to show what files and folders of your project. So we see that on my left side of the screen. And you can see the name of project along the vertical bar. So you see at the very top, you probably have a project, the word 1:project, and that's going to be a little bit darker than the other ones because it's currently selected to show you this view. And so in here, you're going to have all of your files for your project. And we had a question about Gradle scripts. Gradle is going to be how we kind of orchestrate building our Android application. It's also going to be where we manage things like our min SDK and our dependencies for a project. And so for our project, we just have one module. It's our app module. But if you're building more complex apps for production at a work or these sorts of things, they might follow a philosophy of modularizing that app. And so you might actually have multiple of these packages at the kind of top level that are bolded. And so you might have more Gradle scripts down here. So we have one build Gradle that oversees the whole project. And so this is our top level build file where you can add configurations that are common across all of your modules. Again, we only have one. And this is going to be generated for you in that Android template project. So this is one of those things that's just going to show up and we don't have to know a lot about at this stage in our Android knowledge. But it has things like the plugins and also our root project. We also have one that's specific to our app. So this is the one module that we have is our app module. And so it is containing a lot of information about how this project builds and what it targets. So some things that we can see as things that we already set up during our first project is that we have like our application ID. So we saw that when you're setting up our wizard is it's going to be Sierra O'Brien in my case, .example.happybirthday. We also see this min SDK. So we had picked 19 KitKat for that. And so we see that reflected here. The target SDK is what we want to run this sort of thing on. And we have different build types as well. We also have our JVM target and all the dependencies that we need for this application. Again, this is not something that we have to worry about today, but there's a lot of different options that you can put here. And in future code labs, we'll probably have to interact with this as well. So and then the other window, which you're now already seeing in action, is what they labeled number 2 in this code lab, which is the editing window. And this is for editing code. And so this is where any file that you double click on and open is going to show up. So we can open something like our main activity and see our code there. And then we would also be able to type directly into this. If we want to add a comment, I'm editing this file. You see that all happens in this number 2. And so at the top, you can see all the different files you have open right now and switch in between them. So I can jump back over to my build Gradle and back to my activity as well and make changes there as we need to. So with that, we are at our first break. I see a question from Ian is where can I find the code lab for today? So we were going to go back to the same URL that we went to, which is g.co/android/basics. And then we're going to go into the intro to Kotlin, and then we're on pathway 2, which is creating our first Android app. And so we are in the first code lab, which I think is create and run your first Android app. But that's where you'll be able to find it. And so right now we just finished up section 2. When we come back, we're going to run our app on a virtual device. We're going to talk about running our code on an actual device, and we're going to talk about unit testing.
So thanks everyone for participating in the raffle, and thank you all for coming on the break. So we do have our winner. Our winner is Gary from North Seattle College. Congratulations. We will be reaching out after the session for your information to have your prize sent to you. So let's go ahead and get back into this session.
Great. Awesome. Welcome back, everyone. Someone did call out in the chat that in Android Studio looks like a lot like IntelliJ, and that is true. It is built on top of IntelliJ with just everything optimized for Android development. So if you're familiar with using IntelliJ, it will make using Android Studio a lot easier, and you can manage your versions of Android Studio using the JetBrains toolbox if you are using that for your other JetBrains IDEs. So with that, let's go ahead and jump back in. So we are going to be running our app on a virtual device, which is also an emulator. And so in this task, we are in part 3 of create and run your first Android app. And in this task, we're going to use Device Manager to create a software version or an emulator of a mobile device and run it on your computer. A virtual device or emulator simulates the configuration for a particular Android device, such as a phone. This could also be a phone or tablet, and we'll see all of those different things running different versions of Android as well. And then we'll be able to use that device to run our new activity application. So this is really important and really helpful thing that we have access to with Android Studio because if you don't know, there are over 250 Android devices out in the market, and we just saw all the different versions of Android out there. And it's unrealistic to pretend like we can test on all of those physical devices to make sure our application is working. And so by doing this sort of thing, we can check and make sure things are working with these other devices. So we're providing all of our users that might use our Happy Birthday application a perfect user experience. So to do this, we need to open the Device Manager, and there's a couple different ways to do this. So what they mentioned first in the application is to go to the Tools option in the toolbar. And so then about halfway down, you'll see Device Manager. So you can click it from there. And then it should open a new pane in your Android Studio. And so you can see that if you're looking at my screen, I have a lot of emulators already there. Some other ways that you can navigate to this is along the right side of your screen, just like we talked about how on the left side we saw a project. There might also be that Device Manager on the right side that you can click and just open it up there. And then also along the top, you see a bunch of different options. So we see a hammer, we see the word app. You probably don't see anything there, a play button. And then so towards the right-hand side, there is a little phone icon with a little Android at the bottom. And so if you hover over that, it's going to say Device Manager. And so those are 3 different ways that you can open up the Device Manager. I'm going to try to open all these screens. Okay, so now that we have our Device Manager open, if you do have other emulators already created, you will be able to see those in your list. Otherwise, it might be an empty list probably for many of you if you're just getting started. And all of those buttons and different ways to open are mentioned in the code lab. So if you forget or need a refresher later, you can always go back. So we're going to go ahead and create a device. And so at the top of that pane, you're going to see Device Manager, Virtual, Physical, and then right below that is a Create Device. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. And so that's going to open up a virtual device configuration wizard for us to set up our virtual devices. And so when that opens, you should again see on the left side of your screen some different categories. So just like we can create template projects for different types of devices running Android, whether that's a TV, phone, tablet, automotive, or a watch, we can also create emulators that act like those devices so that we can test those applications without having those physical devices to test on. So we're going to get started with a phone, and they recommend that we pick a Pixel 5. And so some of the things that we see on this device is we see the name of the device, Pixel 5. So that is a Google hardware phone. There are some other Nexus, which is a older phone. And I think Anaki last time we mentioned actually the Nexus phone. The other thing we see is the size. So a Pixel 5 has a 6-inch diagonal. And so there's a little, on the right-hand side, you'll see a little graphic that explains some of these things. And so we see the resolution for the Pixel 5 is 1080 by 234. And so that's the width and the height of the phone. And then it also has a density of 440 dpi. And so we are going to go ahead and choose this device and move to the next screen. So the next button is at the bottom right of the screen. And so from here, we're going to select a system image, and the system image window is going to appear. And so this is where you're going to decide what version of Android that you want to run on your device. And so we want to go ahead and pick the latest. So we're going to start with S. And so what we see here is the release name. And so you do see that tiramisu is coming back. They did not name explicitly QR or S, but tiramisu is back in here under its dessert name. I did incorrectly speak and say that Android 12 was just released, but actually Android 13 was just released in developer preview. Android 12 is the current stable version. If you have, again, I mentioned that Android Studio does package some of these with your Android Studio. So you should have S, but you can see some of the other ones you do have to download. They don't automatically give you access to all these, just to keep the download as smaller. And so we're going to select X, and we can again push next there. And so here we can add a name for our AVD, which is an Android virtual device. And so I'm going to call it Android Study Jam. Androids. Ugh, why is my keyboard doing that? Android Study Jam. I'm just going to name it A. Oh, now it's working. Whoops. Android Study Jam device. You can name yours whatever you want. You can leave it as Pixel 5 as well. You can change some other settings, and you might want to go around and mess with them. So you can change the startup orientation, which is just by default, whether it will open in portrait or landscape, or enabling the device frame, whether you want it to actually look like a phone or not. And then we can just go ahead and push finish. And then you should see something on your screen that tells you it's going to create that Android device for you. Excellent. So now in my list of all my virtual devices, I now see my Android Study Jam device here. It's Android 12. And so I can go ahead and push play. And so now if I open up at the top, so I have many virtual devices. If you only have one, at the top, you should now see that little hammer and then the word app in the first kind of drop down along the top kind of right side of your screen. And then you'll see another drop down that should say Pixel 5 or whatever you chose to name your device. They just end up being added in alphabetical order. So I have one named 3012. And so I'm going to go ahead and pick my Android Study Jam device so that I can use my new device to run my app. So if you haven't already, we're now going to run our app on this virtual device. So if it's not already, you can bring your Android Studio to the foreground. Again, just double check that you have app in this first drop down and Android Study Jam in the your device in the second drop down, and then we can go ahead and just push play. So the play button to the right-hand side of that. And so then a new tab should jump out from your Android Studio. It's going to say emulator. Oh, again, I have some settings that I occasionally have to change. You shouldn't have to do this if you're watching mine. Yours should just immediately work. I need to change a setting quickly. That makes different projects run in different ways on my computer. So please hold that thought. We have luckily changed this setting on multiple occasions. And so I know where it is now. but you should not have to do this. Only I have to do this. Change that. Apply that setting. And now mine should also be able to build. So a lot like our opening our Android device manager, there's also a lot of different ways that you can run your code. And they mentioned some of those different ways in the app. So I see a question that says, we didn't add anything to actual code. Nope, we didn't. We're just learning to run and use Android Studio right now. So we didn't have to add any code. And we're just going to run the exact empty activity that we started with. You will be running an external, and so another question is, are emulators more resource intensive than running your app on a physical device? And so with a device, you are actually running the emulator itself in addition to Android Studio. And so that is now 2 programs that are running, versus if you're running on your phone, you don't have to run that additional emulator program because the emulator is just software running on your computer. And so so you no longer have to use that additional resource to run your emulator. So the answer is probably yes, although not something that I've actually ever checked. But if you open, for example, your activity task monitor on Windows, Activity Manager on an Apple computer, you'll see the emulator program running there as well. So it will be an additional second program that has to be run while you do this. So I see some comments. If you have 11, you can also download that or use 11. Most of these will be really similar. The difference between Android 11 and Android 12 are pretty small. Yes, so in the next section of this code lab, we are going to learn how to run directly on devices. And so if you prefer to just skip this section, totally fine. It's good to know that it's there because, again, with running Android applications, there are a lot of devices out on the market. And so knowing how to use the emulator and test on these different phone sizes and different Android versions when you probably aren't going to have all of them on hand is a good skill set for an Android developer to have. But right now, today, if you just want to skip and wait till learning on your phone, totally fine. I do know that Android Studio can take a while to download. And I see everyone saying it's a very slow download. It gives my computer time to build this project while you all are downloading. Let's see any other questions that we have. So Dawson, I see a comment. I can't click the green run button. Do you see your app on the first? It should just say app with a little green Android icon, and your emulator on the second drop down. You'll need both of those to be able to run your app because you need both the app to be able to build. That should happen by default as long as we didn't accidentally add any rogue characters. And then you need something to run it on as well. And so having both of those is going to be important. It also won't be green if your project is already building. So if it's like doing something in the bottom, so like right now mine says Gradle build is running. And so my green play button is grayed out right now because mine is currently doing something and I can't run it twice at the same time. So while this is happening, I'm actually going to move on to section 4 so that we can at least try to stay on time tonight. And so that will continue to run. And then we can go ahead and talk a little bit about your project files as well. And that won't change anything about our project running and in my background, or if you're downloading something as well to get ready, set up with that. So in section 4, it talks about your project files. And so when we set up, we save that to a specific spot. And so if you navigate to that spot in your computer, you can actually find your Android Studio project. So I save all of mine in a development folder. And I am pulling that up now so that you don't have to see everything else. So on my development folder, I did something weird. I can see again all of my different projects for all sorts of things that I mess around and do. So I can now open my happy birthday project. And I can see actually my folder. And so I see this app folder that I see in Android Studio. If I expand that, I see a build, libraries, and source. If I expand my source, I see main. And if I expand main, I see a manifest. Then I see Java. I can open com, Sarah Bryan. We should notice this is our package name, com, Sarah Bryan, example, happy birthday. And then I finally see my main activity. If I look back at Android Studio, we see that this is not exactly the same structure. And what we're using here right now is the Android project view. And what we see at the top right here is this Android project view. So if you're looking at your project pane, you see at the very top going across the screen on the right-hand side, a little green, again, Android icon and the word Android. If we change this drop down, so if you click on an arrow, you can see the drop downs of different ways you can view this project and change it to project, which should be at the top of the list. Then it's actually going to mimic the way that you would see it on your file system on your computer. And so or we can pick the project source files as well and see the different ways that we do this. So this, now we see this app, we see source just like we saw in our folder on our computer. We can open main, we can open Java, and then it automatically opens com, Sarah O'Brien, example, happy birthday, and then main activity. And so we see just those small differences. And then we can also see from this view, when we do project source files, where our project is stored on our computer. So again, I said mine was in development. So you might see Android Studio projects, happy birthday here, or if you change it to somewhere else on your computer as well. I almost always keep mine on the Android view because it is optimized and makes a lot of sense for how to view your folders if you're actually developing an Android application. So in my normal day-to-day life, I'm almost always using the Android project view and very rarely switch it to something else if I need to find something in an unusual place. Again, while mine continues to run, we're going to go ahead and move on to the summary or take any questions that anyone has. I see someone says, Intel Haxum needs to be installed. This is interesting, and my recommendation is probably to go to the troubleshooting for Android Studio, to be honest. This is a Windows-specific problem, and so they do have some troubleshooting for how to deal with the Haxum install. Let me snag maybe a helpful link about the Haxum. I do have one here somewhere that someone else sent to me. But the Android Studio does have some helpful resources for troubleshooting when you run into these kinds of problems. And it is a little annoying, but it is a one-time fix that you have to change something, I think, in your system settings to let it work. So let me go see if I can snag that link really quick. I just sent it to someone. Woohoo! Look, my emulator finally worked. truly incredible how slow my computer will run when I'm presenting and care about how quick it's running. So while that finishes up, so the summary of this particular part is that we were able to create a new project, start Android Studio, and use the templates and fill in some details about our project. We also learned how to create an Android virtual device or an emulator to run our app and how to open and access our device manager. And we learned how to run our app from the Android Studio onto that emulator and how to look at our project and find the project source files from our dropdown. And so at the end of this is going to have some helpful links for learning more. Again, I really recommend the Vocabulary for Android Basics in Kotlin, a really helpful guide for remembering what all the different words means as you work through future code labs. Okay, with that, I'm happy to see some folks are helping out each other in the chat. Let me quickly open this link. Okay. This link might be helpful for some of you with problems on Windows. So the next thing that we're going to do is learn how to run it on our phone. So if you are having problems with the emulator or it's running really slow in my case, we're going to learn how to do it on our phone. And so there's a second lab to help you set this up as well. And so again, if you go to g.co/Android Basics and go into our introduction to Kotlin, this is going to be the next code lab down in that pathway too. And so it's going to be called, it's an optional code lab for running your app on your mobile device. And so in this code lab now, we already have our basic understanding of how to use Android Studio, and we already know how to open and adjust, and hopefully you know how to open and adjust settings on your Android device, although we will kind of walk through it here. And so what you're going to need for this particular code lab is actually a device that you're willing to use for this. And so we will learn how to enable your Android device to run apps from Android Studio and how to connect and run those on the physical device. So to do this, you're going to need Android Studio downloaded and installed. Check already. An app project set up in Android Studio, again, already done and done. And then an Android device such as a phone or tablet. Hopefully you have one, and a USB cable to connect your Android device. So I have mine already set up. So I am going to jump back to this screen, and then I am using a program that I can share my Android device. Oh, I have to set up debugging. Okay, I forgot about that. So let's go back to the code lab and we'll follow through there. So first thing we have to do is turn on USB debugging. And so on your Android device, you are going to open settings. And I actually cannot show you how to do this without having it already set up. But you can open up your settings on your Android device. And then you're going to go to About the Phone or wherever your Android device is going to have the build number. And so on so this varies a little bit from device to device. And so you can also just search it in your settings. So on a Pixel device, which is what this is written about, there is an About the Phone. And down towards the bottom, actually down at the very bottom, you'll find the build number. And so when you do get to that build number, you are going to click on it 7 times. And so as you do that, it's going to say you're 2 steps away from being a developer. And then until you get to number 1, and then you might have to, if you have a PIN set up, you're going to have to re-enter that to confirm you really want to put your device in developer mode. So I have go ahead and done this, and it will say you are now a developer. And so now we're done. You're now a developer and you're good to go. So when you do that, you can return to settings, and now you're going to tap on system. Again, this developer option is going to vary based on device and manufacturer. So if you're on a Samsung, they actually add it as a new option to your setting menus, and on a Pixel, it's hidden underneath settings. The question of why you must tap 7 times is because there are actually some Easter eggs hidden throughout your settings. And so there are some other things that you can tap multiple times and then things pop up and they're fun. But the actual reason for number 7, I think, is that they really want to make sure that you want to do it. They don't necessarily want people just accidentally putting themselves into developer mode and not having any idea why they're doing it. But I don't know why it's a magic number of 7 specifically. So for me, I am just gonna go. So again, I'm on a Pixel, so I do go to System and the Developer Options. And so when you're in Developer Options, you are going to need to find USB debugging. On the Pixel, there's a section called Debugging, and it's the first toggle there. This is also something that you can just search in your settings to get there quickly as well. And so with that, you're just going to turn it on. You're going to get a pop-up that says, ask you if you want to allow USB debugging. And so if you want to go ahead and connect to Android Studio, you'll have to agree to that. And so you can press OK. And then your USB debugging is turned on. And you can always turn this off, or your developer options off from this menu as well. So if you decide you no longer want your phone to be in developer mode, totally fine. You can just turn it off. So now this is again a step specific for our Google Windows users. And so you're going to need to install the Google USB driver. And so to do this, you're again going to go to that Tools Manager, the Tools tab at the top, and then go to SDK Manager. When you do that, you'll see actually the screen that popped up when I was changing a quick Gradle setting for my computer that no one else had to do. And so that's a second way to access this as well, is you're going to be in that Android SDK. You'll want to pick on SDK Tools, and then in that list, you need to checkbox the Google USB driver. So at the top, it will say SDK Platform, SDK Tools, SDK Update Site. So you'll click on the SDK Tools tab and then select Google USB driver and click OK. And when that's done, it's going to download into the Android_SDK extras Google USB driver directory. And now you should be able to connect and run your device from Android Studio. Again, there are directions here as well if you need to follow them along. So now that my device is set up, I can jump back to Android Studio. And so now in my screen, I now have the Google Pixel 3a at the top of my screen. And I can actually now play my Google Pixel as well. So now I can run my Android app directly onto my phone. If this is the first time connecting your Android device to your laptop via the USB cord, you will also see a pop-up on your screen that says allow USB debugging, and it will give your computer's RSA key footprint. And so that's something else that you'll just have to agree to so that your computer is allowed to talk to that device, so that we can tell Android Studio to run directly onto this phone as well. And then once you do that, you should see it in your dropdown as your devices that you can run your application on. So it will just be mixed into those devices that in our device dropdown along the top of our screen in Android Studio. Section 5 of this code lab is going to do some troubleshooting for why your phone can't show up. A lot of it is very much have you unplugged it and plugged it back in. You can also uncheck that RSA fingerprint and try to force it again. I don't think that it's recommended or not recommended to use a wireless connection versus a USB. Some of it depends, I think, on how you prefer to set it up. My phone is almost always connected by USB, and so I almost always do it on a USB cable, simply because that is what I'm used to. and what I have always done, and it charges my phone at the same time because I have an older device, and so it doesn't. So it has to be plugged into charge. So totally a personal preference. This particular code lab uses the USB cable, so that's what we're going to do. But if you want to set up some of the other options, I definitely encourage you to explore and do some of the other cool things that Android Studio can do. And so with that, we should just be able to push play and run our app on our Google, on our physical device as well. So if I push play, it will probably be slow again, which I love. Oh, this one is quite fast because it's already built. So I am going to so I use a program called Visor so that you can see my hardware device. So now this is my actual phone that I'm using here. And so we can finally see this app running for me after many minutes of waiting. And so we see our happy birthday at the top. We see our hello world text in the middle of our empty activity. And our first Android application is running on our device, which is awesome. I see Denny said, I don't see my device. So I do recommend checking out the troubleshooting of our code lab. Some of the things that it does recommend is unplug and replug your phone back in. If you're running on a Windows and it doesn't work, they give you some links to help set up the appropriate USB driver for your device. If you're running on a Linux or Windows, you also have some additional steps for running on a hardware device. And if your device or if your computer doesn't find the device or declares it unauthorized, you can disconnect the USB and then go and revoke that USB debugging authorization and reconnect and try again. So those are some steps to take to try to get it to show up. I definitely had one device that I almost always had to plug in and unplug and re-plug back in several times to get it to show up. It was really frustrating. And my actual solution was just finding a newer USB cable. For whatever reason, that computer really didn't like that particular USB. So it can be something really simple like that, or you can check out these other troubleshooting tips in the code lab in section 5. So with that, we are going to move to our last section. I promise this is a very short one. We only have 4 quick sections, which is going to be just the basics of Android tests. We're not, again, going to write anything. We're just going to learn a little bit about them and why they're super important. So for this particular part of the code lab, we have, again, already have our computer set up with Android Studio installed, and we already have our previous project from earlier in this pathway open and ready. And so we're going to learn what testing is, what automated testing is, what unit and instrumentation tests are, and where to find those tests in our Android project that was already built for us. So in section number 2 of this, it's going to give us a little overview of what testing is. And so it tells us that testing in the context of software is a structured method for checking our software to make sure it works correctly. And then automated testing is actual code that checks and ensures that other pieces of code that we wrote is correctly working. Testing software is advantageous because you get to weed out some bugs before you release your code into the wild, which again, all we're trying to do is provide that really good user experience. And so while manual testing is always in place, testing in Android can often be automated. And a fun fact about my day today is that I spent a good deal of my day today writing automated Android tests. So again, something that you really see in the real world life of an Android developer. Throughout the Android Basics and Kotlin course, so what we're working through right now, you'll focus on automated tests to test the app code and the functional requirements of the app itself. And in this code lab, all we're going to do is learn the basics of testing in Android. And in later code labs, we're going to build on that knowledge and learn more advanced practices of testing Android apps. As you become familiar with Android development and testing apps, you should make it a regular practice to write tests alongside your app code. You might have taken a course about test-driven development or something like this in your studies as well. It's a really common thing that you often learn about as part of a software engineering curriculum. And if you create a test every time you create a new feature in your app, it's going to reduce your workload later. It's a good practice to get into now. And so it also provides a convenient way for you to make sure your app works properly without spending too much time manually testing your app. And so here we're going to talk about two different kinds of automated testing, both the unit testing code and the instrumentation testing code as well. And so again, this is giving us an overview of these sorts of things. So if we jump back into our project, we can actually look at where these things are. So I'm going to jump back into my Android Studio. And so here we've only so far looked at this main activity and some of the Gradle files to answer a quick question. But there are also these two green folders that are also labeled COM, just like our source folder was labeled COM. And one of those is Android test, and one of those is also tests, is just regular test. And so first we're going to talk about the test folder. So if we open this, we see the exact same structure. And so this is going to be an example unit test. It's not going to do a lot, but it's what comes with all of our projects with Android Studio, just as an example of everything set up as a placeholder so that we can kind of jump in and add our own test as we start writing code. Unit tests are the local tests in Android that are located in this test folder, and they're usually unit test. And unit tests directly test a small piece of code to ensure that it's functioning properly. So last time we learned about functions, and some of those functions have return types. And so that's something that we could test with a unit test, is test that what we expect that function to return with some kind of input is going to be what it actually returns using some of the unit testing frameworks. And these tests are just going to run on your computer and don't need to spin up a special emulator or run on a device to make sure that they work. So if we go ahead and open these, all we see here is that a very little test that says addition is correct. So that's the name of our test. We learned about functions last week. We see this special annotation called @test that just tells our system that we're running a test. And we have this assert equals that says expected for, and actual is going to be 2 plus 2. So if we go ahead and run these tests, and we can do that right here in the sidebar where we see the line numbers, there's a little red and green arrow. And if you click on that, you'll see run example test as the first option. There are also some other options that you might use if you ever have problems with your unit test. Like if you want to debug something because it's not working and you think and you're not sure why, we can go ahead and run that unit test from there. And then a bottom pane should pop up as it runs. That's starting, and it says it's instantiating tests, and we don't know how long my computer is going to take to actually run it. But when we do that, it will run one test. It will say that it's called addition is correct, and it will give us 1 out of 1 test pass. The other type of testing that we do in Android is called instrumentation tests. And this is what I actually spent most of my day doing, is this specific kind of testing. And in the context of Android development, instrumentation test is a term for what is usually a user interface test or a UI test. And it lets you test parts of your app that depend on activity and fragment life cycles and perform API and service tests. Unlike these unit tests, you're not going to interact directly with the code, but instead it tests the user interface to make sure that the correct UI components are displaying and that they behave the way that you expect when actions are taken. And so you can do things like check, is this view visible? And then click a button and assert that something else happens. And so it's a really nice framework to actually interact with your app. And I actually really like running instrumentation tests because you can see the app open, run through those commands, and you can watch the testing framework interact with your app on its device. And so these kind of tests are going to be in this other green folder, the Android test. And so if you open this one, you again will see the exact same structure, Sierra O'Brien example, happy birthday, and then an example instrumentation test as well. And so if we open that one, and this time it's again a very simple little test that says use app context. And so all it does is get the context that we need for our application. And then it tests that the package name that we expect. So in this case, we expect our package name to be com.0brian.example.happybirthday. And the package name from the context of our app are going to be the same. And so we could also run this by, again, clicking on the green and red arrow and pushing run test. And then it will actually need to run on a device or an emulator as well. And so that is going to kind of wrap up this section. And those are things that you can run as well in practice. Does anyone have any questions? I know that we're a little bit over time and that these tests are moving very slow for all of us. So hopefully you're able to run those on your local machine a little bit faster than I can. But that is going to be the last section of our Code Labs for today. And so any questions you all have about anything with unit testing or instrumentation tests, or if you have any problems with that, I see that some folks set up their devices wirelessly, which is awesome. And with that, I'm just happy to answer questions. Hope to see you all back next week. Hope that this piques your interest in Android development. Yep. And yes, I can send the Code Lab. So again, all of these Code Labs you can find in the same pathway number 2 of the Kotlin basics. So these are all ordered one after the other. And after doing this, you also want to take the quiz as well on these Code Labs. To get your badge for each section. I know we talked about the badges last week and not this week, but really awesome thing that you get to do. So my unit tester just finished up while moving around some of those links and answering those questions. And so you can see here that my test 1 of 1 passed because I only had the single unit test. And so I could do the same thing with my instrumentation test, although I'm sure it will also take some time. Oh, this one's going to go fast. Okay, so my instrumentation also just is running. And so we see, again, just a tab that pops up that's going to give us our test results. It tells me that it's going to run it on my Pixel 3a. It actually closed that application as soon as I ran it because it's killing off the currently running app if you still have that one open to replace it with this instrumentation test. And so you should see something similar if you're running it on your device, and you can run those on either the device itself or the emulator. It's going to by default run it on whatever's in your top device dropdown.
Great. Thank you all for tuning into our session. Thank you again, Sierra, for an amazing hands-on session. We do enjoy that. So as she mentioned before, at the end of the pathway, if you pass the quiz successfully, you'll earn this badge for your developer profile. So make sure that you go ahead and take that quiz and earn your badges, because that's what we're going to use for your prizes. Also, if you make anything based off what you've learned, please feel free to share it with us on social media. We'd love to see what you create in Android. So definitely add us there, and we'll love to see all the amazing creations that you have. Also, some resources. So definitely sharing with you, continue learning. If you'd like to learn more about Android, you can come to the study jams as we continue to cover the fundamentals of Android basics in the Kotlin course. And also, you can modify the apps we built together and learn by adding more features to them. You can use Google search or look at existing code samples and videos online for how to add additional features to your app. Google developers also offer a wide range of resources for you to continue learning. Thank you so much for being part of the Android Study Jams. Good luck on the beginning of your Android developer journey. And make sure to tune in next week for our continued session in this. And if you have any questions, we definitely dropped Sierra's LinkedIn and Twitter to follow her to connect for any other information that you guys may have. Any last words for them, Sierra?
Thank you so much for being here today, and I can't wait to see everyone again next week.
All right, awesome. Thank you all, and see you all next week when we start another session.